San Francisco, California, this is What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Abarca with Andy Lipson. Today, the topic we will be discussing is voting and elections. Specifically, does it matter to vote? We have a divided opinion here. So
I'm going to be very unpopular after this video. Brady won't want to talk to me anymore.
So we decided to do this because, we'll have a discussion that's a little generic about the topic on voting and elections in general, but because we are in the month of November now, and voting in the USA is the 6th of November,
correct,
which is this Tuesday.
The first Tuesday of November.
Yes, the first Tuesday of November.
That's when all these votes have been cast, they'll be counted.
Mm-hmm. So we are discussing it because thinking about it, I wanted to do a post-discussion, but Andy wanted to do a prior discussion.
So I could convince you all not to vote.
He's already stating his
it's
position.
too late, your absentee ballots are all in and stuff, but
so I'm here going to be discussing the side on the reasons why we should vote, why it matters, and the importance of voting in general. I do think there are issues to it, and I will delve into that. But we stand divided on this one, and I'm hoping that I can convince you more than Andy can to vote. So that's our topic for this discussion. I think I know why you're going to say voting doesn't matter, but if you're going to say voting doesn't matter, I also want to hear you tell me eventually and why it matters at all in general in other institutions and other systems.
Do you want me to make the case first and then you, or do you want to say it?
Yeah, like I wasn't, like we had mentioned, this is casual and we also didn't plan a format or anything. Right. This is not a debate, here and there. It's just more of like, I have questions for Andy that I think that you all will have as well, and I have some rebuttals as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead, Andy. I think if you started off this way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first off, most of my life I have voted, and I think most of my life I voted Democrat. Mm-hmm. I think in 1992, and I'm going to mark it by the presidential elections, even though this is a midterm. In 1992, I voted for Ross Perot. He ran as an independent, and I was like, he sounded different, and I wasn't particularly left-wing or right-wing at that time. I guess I didn't even know about those terms really. In 1996, I voted for Bill Clinton. By year 2000, I was already becoming kind of radicalized by the war. I was done with the Democrats, all for good by then. By the year 2000, I voted for Nader. Voted for Nader in 2004. And then in 2008, I was like, there's nothing to vote for. I certainly didn't vote for Obama, didn't vote for, who was it, Romney? I was done with Democrats and Republicans by year 2000. But in 2004 and 2000, I still was like, well, maybe a third party vote and things like that. And I'll get into, there might be situations where I could see such a thing. And this is a developing idea for me as time goes on, and as I'm not going to say that I've figured everything out, but this is where I'm at right now. Now I'm pretty much like, I'm for the most part just done with voting. Let me say why. First off, what do I think? What I think elections are. First of all, let's go back to what Bruce said about capitalism. We live in a capitalist system, and as Bruce 2 weeks ago said, capitalism socializes production, but privatizes the wealth that's generated out of that production into the hands of a few people. Capitalism is, as I described before, the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. It's the dictatorship of the capitalist class over the working class. And this system is an exploitative and oppressive system for all workers, and doubly oppressive for black workers, for Muslim workers, for women. And we all experience it at different levels, but it's oppressive to all of us. And exploitative of every worker on the planet. Because profit is exploitation, basically, given a number. So what do elections do in my mind, particularly in this country? The role of elections are really to hide that fact, and to it's sort of like a fairy tale told to workers that you have a say in you have a stake in the system, you have a say in your system, and you can modulate your state to essentially using the electoral system to stop the worst aspects of it, and actually maybe even get to something close to fairness within the system. And it is, I think, elections. Again, I'm just speaking for the United States, but I think this might be true generally. Elections are essentially the way this ruling class in this country are able to rule, not primarily by repression, although they do rule by repression, and you find that out, through looking at our prison system, through looking at our massive police apparatus that we have in this country. So they do use repression, and they use the threat of that repression, but that is not primarily how they rule the working class in this country. They primarily rule the working class in this country through consent, and that consent is partly gained by the things they learn in school, the ideology of checks and balances and American Revolution and democracy. But the biggest area of consent, that the way the ruling class is able to get the working class to abide by capitalist rule over them, is to get them to participate in elections. And so I'll put it this way, and maybe I'll ask a question here. If there was 90%, when there's, say, 90% voter turnout in a given election, which isn't real, but let's say there was 90% voter turnout, how will the capitalist class feel about 90% voter turnout? Do they feel good about that, or does that worry them, in your opinion?
If there was a 90%
90% voter turnout.
I would say that it would worry them.
A 90% voter turnout, okay.
That's why there are voter suppression tactics.
Okay, that's a good thing to say. So, and you would say, what if there was 10% voter turnout?
I think the ruling class wouldn't mind.
Okay, so that's the opposite of what I believe. I believe the ruling class, like 90% voter turnout, is like awesome. Like the fact that we have a high voter turnout this year is great for the ruling class. It basically means everyone's bought in to their trick, to their game, to their illusion. And why ruling classes, particularly the more repressive ruling classes in Latin America, force working classes to vote, is because they can't get away with that trick as well as they've gotten away with it here. That's why they have to say it's illegal to not vote. You have to vote. It allows
what
that.
Latin American country says that? I know Australia says something like that, but
I try to remember which one, but there are Latin American countries.
I know there are
Yeah.
Chile, and they have like over 90% turnout.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And so that is one of the reasons they do that. And this is why they did it in the former Soviet Union, where everyone knew that voting was a complete joke, right? Mm-hmm. And it was that awareness that voting was absolutely a joke that was a prelude in some ways to the turnover of that country. So voter turnout is, in my mind, is something that capitalists count on as a way of assessing how well have we fooled our working classes into believing that they have a stake in the system, that there's something here for them. And last, I think maybe this is an opening salvo here. Mm-hmm. I used to think that, at least in the context of social movements, like when there was the movements against WTO and things like that in 2000, that we said something about voting for Ralph Nader, that it was the movement going to the polls. I don't believe, at least in the context of these reformist movements, if there was a truly revolutionary movement in this country that was looking to take down the capitalist class, I'm not sure then. Okay, then I'll defer here. But we don't have such a movement in this country. But in the context of reformist movements that exist in this country, they can't go to the polls. What happens to reformist movements when they go to the polls is they get captured by the Democratic Party and partially Republican Party sometimes. I think you could see that with the Tea Party has been, I don't know what you could call the Tea Party, but they've now been captured and have been brought into the fold of entirely buying into the system per se. But the movement cannot go to the polls. When the movement goes to the polls, it goes into the Democratic Party and it dies. And it gives up on its own independent demands. So I would say, not that voting doesn't matter, I would actually put it this way. Voting matters very, very much for the capitalist class. It unfortunately matters a lot for workers because we are fooled into thinking that we can actually change our system that way. But currently, the best thing you could do right now to oppose your system is to not vote today and to organize whatever you can tomorrow. And even organize today if you have. But today's, or not vote on Tuesday. But because I would say that is the biggest way you can tell them, you're not fooling me. I know what this game is about, and I'm not falling for it. I'm actually going to organize my colleagues on Tuesday, and I'm going to do it on Wednesday, I'm going to do it on Thursday. We'll get into really what the most important political acts are for people. Unfortunately, currently, people think their most important political day is that Tuesday or that June day when they vote. And that is the least important political act a worker can take, first of all. And secondly, actually I think the best thing a worker could do on Tuesday is to not vote at all and basically say, forget it, I'm not falling for this charade.
Right. I will try to be very civil.
Have I not been civil?
I think you have.
Thank you.
This is a message for you and many of my socialist friends that are out there, because I hear this, they post so many things on Facebook, as like you and other friends that I have that are socialists and anarchists and radicals, and it's like, to me, it is just like, I roll my eyes every time I see all their posts on Twitter, rants about not voting and anything. Why cannot we do both? Why cannot we do both? We can do voting and organization outside of the voting polls. We don't have to wait until November, which I think is what the Democrats are always proposing, that we do our show up on November. I do not think that we should focus all our energy in November. This is one thing I do not agree with. But what I do have to say is we can do all means possible, all mediums that we can. We can organize at the grassroots level. We can vote. We can also impeach. We can also try to organize ourselves and create collectives and show what we can do locally at the local level, and hopefully expand whatever we do at the local level. We can, if we want to have a revolution as well, we can do that as well. But whilst this is happening in the midst of our organization, this system exists within our reality. And whilst it exists in our reality, we can try to change certain things as a reformer in this moment. We don't have to, it feels to me it's like it's an extremist issue to be saying all or nothing. I think we can do some and still organize and put our energy into, you don't have to, I'm not asking you to canvass, Andy. Yeah. I'm not asking my friends, excuse me, to canvass. I have participated in many campaigns for candidates and for propositions, but I'm not asking you or anyone else to go canvass. I am asking everyone to just give your support so that we can cause some social change. Many of the causes that we've had have been, not all, I will agree, but many have been as a result of many causes like same-sex, which was overturned, I understand, by Proposition 8. I remember that, yes. But the ballot the issue on the ballot causes people to think about issues and to question them and to debate them and to have them challenged in court systems or to be challenged within communities. I think people don't talk and think about issues deeply until they are asked to question, where do you stand? And when you are asked to question, where do you stand, you have to make a decisive decision of where you are going to more so put your support in. And this I have seen for legalization of marijuana. I do not smoke marijuana. Mm-hmm. I do not smoke cannabis. I do not like it, but I do believe that part of resisting or part of getting rid of the war on drugs is to legalize some of these things that are being sold only for certain people and jailing and incarcerating others. But how do we discuss those issues? Or decriminalization of prostitution? Well, we have that when we had the Proposition K some years ago in San Francisco to decide to decriminalize prostitution. How do we have these discussions unless we bring them up on the ballots? People otherwise do not have these discussions. You can tell me that it doesn't matter to vote, but when you say that and people are voting, and there's a low voter turnout, and the watersheds and all environmental policies are being created because of conservative values, because of conservative ideas that do not believe in environmental policies to be placed in place because it hurts businesses, or because of certain social issues that we should have, such as immigration. Should we have a sanctuary city? Maybe should we vote for that? The mayor here, we already have that here in San Francisco, but if we have that on a ballot, and we can have non-citizens vote as well, such as in San Francisco, for the very first time, we are now having school board elections for non-citizens. Those things are all part of a democratic system. When you have people deciding on something, it is not the only thing as part of the democratic system, but I do think that it is part of a process so that we can hear out, even if you think that it's rigged at the federal level, many things at the local level does affect us. Many of the environmental policies that many of my friends did not vote for in the East Bay affected and still have repercussions on environmental, I cannot think of the propositions right now, which I can post on later, but affected the East Bay regional parks. And when we think of gentrification in San Francisco, if we tax the wealthy to be able to support our schools, if we tax the wealthy so that we can have homeless issues be changed here in San Francisco, it does make a difference. But if you're just deciding to wait for the revolution and not decide to vote or anything, when is your revolution going to come, Andy? In 10, 20 years from now, and in all this time, we could have homeless people off the streets or something like that. Do you think these are breadcrumbs? But why is it all or nothing? I feel this is what the debate is about. It's like, it's all or nothing. It's always, we are not going to vote, but you're going to just exert all your energy in some cause that still hasn't gained momentum, and we need to wait for that to happen, for the revolution to happen. I'm ready for the revolution. Jump me in when I'm ready, but I'm not going to let go of having my voice heard in some small matter if I am part of a grain of sand that can be contribution to a heavy load of sand to make some changes. Many of the causes, and this is the causes are threatening to establishments, and if we have people go out and turn out. Millennials, my generation, millennials are now 1/3 of the population that rule the electorate, as well as we are the most diverse generation in history of the USA. We're the most diverse as far as sexuality, as far as race, ethnic backgrounds, as well as different statuses and women. This is the most changing times of the USA. And when Mexico had people come out and vote, and they voted for AMLO, I do not think that the Mexican people want to have continuous corrupt governments. But I think that if you have some say in your government, it shows that it gives people some hope that they have in feeling like there is power in their numbers. And if that can be said about their voting, then maybe they can detach themselves from the voting eventually and see that they can then create something bigger than just voting by uniting collectively to overthrow people that are not in place for our interest as the working class. But if you say, first of all, voting does not matter, people do not, in most contexts, in most people's lives, do not see anything else how they can contribute to society. We have to get them out to be politically involved. And most people are not watching this YouTube video because people are bored of politics, because politics are something that is like, I don't want to be a part of that. And I'm sure that anyone watching this is not going to feel like can contribute to society. Voting is not the be-all and the end-all. But it is one aspect of our contribution. And I think that there are many aspects that we can do. But it isn't all just to take away your voting. People have fought hard. And if voting didn't matter, then why are there so many voter suppression tactics from especially the Republican Party, such as gerrymandering? And why are they taking away Native Americans' rights from voting? They do not state it like that. Like, I know some people, like my friend here from Florida, who will say they do not state that they're taking away Native American rights. But when you say that everyone has to have a legitimate address, when most Native Americans on reservations have P.O. boxes address, then you are suppressing a vote. When you say that you have voter ID laws and you have the representative of our country, this administration, stating that you have to have an ID even when you go grocery shopping, which is not true, because I have never pulled out my ID for grocery shopping unless from my debit card, but when I use cash I do not. That is another voter suppression when you have voter ID laws. When you have people have felons not being able to vote, you're taking away rights from returning citizens, which is, I prefer more to say returning citizens than to say these convicts. Mm-hmm. I think that these are the reasons why people have those suppression tactics, because people do not want to have them say anything, have a say in our government. And if we look at that, it is a threat to them. But if we show up in numbers, this country isn't so much a Republican or Democrat. It is a no show up, turnout vote country. If you see other countries like Switzerland, they are more voter turnout, and they have a lot more democratic socialist ideologies in place that we do not have here. More what Republicans like to call social welfare, but social programs to be able to support, and more leniency to have groups and collectives that can change the system. I fantasize many times that we can have what we used to have in the 1900s in the Mexican Revolution, or the revolutions in France to overthrow the monarchy, but I cannot name a revolution that has happened in the last recent years, Andy, that can give us hope. And I am waiting for it. You are an admirable person to be able to keep to your principles, but I think that when you are also dismissing this other aspect that we can have alongside, I think that you are cutting off resources. Ayúdame. Resources.
Resources?
Resources.
Mm-hmm.
When you're cutting off resources, they should have a double E in the word. And when you're cutting off resources, it's like you can use all aspects of your personhood in this government and the future government that you wish to create. It's the reason why, if you think about our ancestors, at least, well, not mine because I'm Mexican, but the African American vote that was suppressed, it wasn't until the majority of African Americans could not vote up until 1965. Women could not vote until 1920, and Asian Americans could not vote until 1952, and Native Americans could not vote around the same time, which I do not remember the year at this moment. But it is something that we have to consider as to why the ruling class doesn't want the people to vote, because it is a threat to them. And if people show up in numbers, it is a threat, which is the reason why people are recorded, like in the state of Georgia, where the guy running against Stacey Abrams, I forget his name at this moment, had been secretly recorded about how he was criticizing people. Stacey Abrams was having a campaign about showing up for voting. So I think it is a threat for people on the establishment. I think that we can do both. Why can't we compost, recycle, and throw our rubbish in the landfill? Like, why does it have to be just one bin? You know? Go ahead.
Okay.
Just like
yeah, no, I hear you. Well, I think you said it best first when you said, why does it have to be all or nothing? That's the difference for us. Is that it
for
is
us who?
For you and me. And I think for if you agree with Eduardo, then for you, whoever, anybody who's saying we can have it, it can be both, or why do you have to make it all or nothing? It's like saying that the question of revolution is an all or nothing question. It isn't like a little bit of capitalism will work. No, it won't. The whole thing has to go down. The whole system.
One day of you voting, how long does it take for you to vote? How long?
I'll
30
get to that.
minutes.
I'll get to that.
You
in a
take to
second.
30 minutes to vote in, Andy, and all of a sudden you say that all of your revolution, your organizing is destroyed
Yes.
by
Yes.
30 minutes of your voting.
Because here's what happens, and I'm going to get you. First of all, you're not accepting the fact that I am all or nothing, and revolution is all or nothing. That's what that means. It means we're not accepting any amount of capitalism. We want to take the whole system down, and we want to basically have workers in power and create an entirely new system. We want all of that. We want nothing to do with capitalism. We want to end the profit system. So that is all or nothing. And secondly, it's not. You can't have it both ways. Here's what happens. Inevitably, people go to the polls. They vote for, like, you're going to vote for some Democrat, and then
I'm not going to just vote for Democrats.
But that's
largely there are propositions that are at stake as well.
We'll get to propositions later, but that's not really what we're talking about in terms of this thing about voting. You are also talking about candidates, and what people do is when they vote for those candidates, they are generally voting for, and this is why people are turned off by politics. They are generally voting for candidates that are offering far less than what they want, but this is the best that's on offer. We call it often the lesser evil. And what they do is they wait. They wait to see what those candidates will do. And they wait to see whether those candidates will deliver even the table scraps they're talking about. And here's what happens. And this is why the anti-war movement is gone. This is why the immigrant rights movement is gone.
Because of voting.
Yes, because of voting. Exactly because of voting. In 2006, they went into the streets and said, immigrants are welcome here. No person is illegal. We want, essentially there were some people calling for open borders. Well, guess what happened? In the interim, like maybe by 2008, 2010, you started hearing about DACA. You started hearing about Democrats supporting, we'll give rights to only a section of the most skilled, promising immigrants. But MS-13, Honduran gangs, you stay out. And guess who fell for that? Guess who? Sorry.
The painting.
Yeah. And guess who fell for that? The immigrant rights movement fell for that, and it collapsed itself into the Democratic Party, and now it's looking for its
That's
leadership.
how we should have more than two parties.
But I'm saying that situation doesn't even exist in this election, okay? And we can get to whether or not I'm saying we don't just need more than two parties. If we're going to talk about elections, we need a revolutionary party. We don't have one. The fact is that all the change that people are asking for, U.S. out of Iraq and Afghanistan right now. Now it's become, now it's become people even accepting drones. People accepting that. That was delivered to us by the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party.
I understand, but what does it have to do with voting?
Because it's been the process of voting, it's the process of the elections that has caused people to systematically lower their expectations and give up on their own ideas. And this is part of why people are so disaffected by politics, because they feel like politics are about selling yourself out. And they are. That's because, I'm not saying voting doesn't matter. I'm saying it matters most to the capitalist class. It matters to us in the sense of we're constantly getting suckered to believe that this system's going to work for us. No, it doesn't. It doesn't deliver for us. It can't deliver for us because capitalism can't deliver for us. The reason you think it is delivering for people, okay, is because you think capitalism works. You're a reformist. You're not a revolutionary. Hold on.
I'm anti-capitalist.
You are not.
But I also am a realist, and I understand. I'm a pragmatic person, and I understand that this system is not going to go out overnight. And it will take some time for it to go out. And until that happens, I will make sure that we can cause some social change within our system, even at the local level in San Francisco. If we can be very critical and tell my district supervisor or my mayor and say, or even, I am not in agreement with this, and I'm not going to have you, and I'm going to expose you. At the local level, I can organize my neighbors and my communities, which has happened in San Francisco. And we can try to have a more democratic process, more so at the local level than at the federal level.
No, it's criminal at all levels. It's no less criminal, it's no less capitalistic at the local level than it is at the federal level. At every level, we are getting screwed. You don't believe that because you don't think the capitalism is the problem. It is. All the stuff that's happening with Twitter, with Wells Fargo, with gentrification in our cities, that's capitalism. There's not a single politician you can vote for to stop any of that stuff. I'm not talking about federal
Because
level.
people don't go out to vote.
But there's nothing to vote for that could stop it. Literally, there's literally nothing to vote for that can stop it, because a lot of these relationships of property ownership, where is it? Where is it in the books? What law says I have the right to use? I have the right to use my business to exploit people and not pay them as much, which is what profits are. What law says that? Where is that law in the books, in the Constitution? Is there a law that says that?
No, but we can elect people.
No, there isn't. No, hold on. Listen.
Just
listen for a second. Okay? There isn't. The exploitation under capitalism is separate from our political system. They work together, but these aren't constituted in laws that can be changed. This is just the way the system works, and they have a set of laws to maintain a state that maintains the economic dominance of the capitalist class at every level of society, not just national level, not just state level, at the local level. It exists at every level. We are exploited, and the state operates to suppress us at every level. There's no place that we can get into the state and say, oh, well, here's where we can make it work for us. No. The reason I know that is because I'm a revolutionary. I know that capitalism is the problem. I know that capitalism exists at every level of our society. It affects even my job. Like, my job is to give grades to workers, to sort them out for the capitalist, to say, here, give this A person with A's a job, give this person F a place in prison. That's my job, okay? Because I live under capitalism. Capitalism at every level exploits and oppresses people. And so the reason, and this gets to the question of oppression, the reason that capitalists cared about disenfranchisement of the black vote or Native American vote is not because they cared about elections, although maybe one party says, I can't get that vote, so I'm going to keep that away. It's the two capitalist classes fighting over the votes of the black vote or the Latino vote or the Native American vote. But the reason that was important for them is because racism is important for them to divide the working class. It's not because of elections. So yes, they will use racism to divide workers. They're using it very well right now to get us to blame immigrants. Remember, in 2008, all right, in 2008, people were pissed about the economy, okay? And people were like, what can we do to actually make it so that things can be fair? Well, what happened? George Bush, Barack Obama, in literally like 3 months, gave a $1 trillion bailout to the banks, all right? They collaborated to do that. Mm-hmm. A bigger bailout than has ever been given to workers, ever. They did that in 3 months, all right? And we didn't get to vote on that. We didn't get to, they just decided to do that. That's how the state works. And what did that produce when not just George Bush did, but Barack Obama agreed to that kind of stuff? It produced, it initially produced the anger of Occupy, but when the anger around Occupy was both attacked by the Democratic Party and then brought into the Democratic Party saying, oh, you can count on us to make a change, well, here's what it led to. It led to essentially people becoming dismayed. And now the very anger, which used to be directed at the banks, which is now being directed at immigrants. That is a product. The racism we are seeing against immigrants is a product of the movement failing to maintain its independence, going to the Democratic Party and counting on Democrats to do something, essentially meaning the movement giving up on its own ideals, and therefore the working class says, forget you. We don't believe in that stuff. And now what's happened? We are attacking immigrants viciously because we gave up on our ideas when we gave them over to the Democratic Party, and when we essentially allowed the Democratic Party to be.
You're collapsing that our voting is only for the Democratic Party.
Well,
it's in this system when we're voting for candidates that only are giving us a binary candidate. When we only have. I'm not saying that we're just voting for candidates. I'm also talking about propositions. I'm also talking about judges that are making court cases. I'm also discussing local board education members. I'm talking about voting in general. You're saying Democratic and Republican. And it's unfortunate that this binary system does oppress other third-party candidates to be able to be heard. That's why Bernie Sanders could not run on any third-party candidacy, because he had seen it from Ralph Nader. And that is why he had to go as a Democrat. I understand that there is a system in place for these candidates, but there are other social issues that we have to vote on that are not just about candidates, such as should we have abortion or should we not? And that is something that we have to be very careful when I am not affected by being pregnant, But there are women in conservative states that do not have access to clinics, do not have access to healthcare, because they're being it's a desert for them to be able to access these places. They have to travel to other states because in their state, people at the state and local level, these institutions are in place for them not to have the clinics available to them. But if you vote for a proposition, if you vote for a local, this music. What was I saying before the music distracted me? It was a very melancholic music.
Yeah. If you vote for...
Well, it's just there are resources that are available to people
You were talking about propositions.
Here. Yes. And there are resources that are available for people outside of California. We're very privileged to live in one of the most progressive, even reformist states that there is. Many of the states that exist that I have traveled to in the South that do not have access to many of the privileges, and I don't mean political privileges like white privilege. I'm talking about privileges like benefits that we have here that we overlook, that I don't have to, and most people have healthcare here in San Francisco that we do not worry about, that can be accessible for most people here in San Francisco. And there are resources like the food bank, and there are resources for children and the Children's Council here in San Francisco. All these things that are in place because we have more ideals here that we elect for. That's why Republicans don't run here as a mayor, because they know that the ideology here isn't going to allow for Republicans to thrive as a mayor here. Now, do we have corporate Democrat mayors? Yes, we've had them. Gavin Newsom has been one of them. And people champion him as a progressive. I do not think so. But I think that when we're talking about voting in elections, we shouldn't confuse it just to be candidates. We should also think about propositions, judges, assessors, Board of Education board members. And voting is, and I was going to ask you eventually, voting is part of a socialist system as well. And so if we are to have voting, we should exercise it by all means possible, because it is what we should decide as a collective. If we were to live under a socialist democracy, a socialism, not a capitalist democracy, but a socialist democracy, would we not have to vote as well?
Yeah.
Is it not also part of a collective when you were part of many of your organizations, in your socialist organizations? Did you not have to vote as well?
Right, but voting
is in general as a means to be able to decide and cast an issue as a collective, as a majority versus a minority, is something that is in place for a lot of things, not just for this capitalist system. Voting is not, I think people attach, socialists do this a lot, is like, voting is not just part of the capitalist system. Voting is part of any system, whether it's a family system in your home and you're saying, family, where are we going for this summer vacation?
Yep.
We're going to either France or we're going to Mexico. And you vote, well, part of it, most of the family wants to go to Mexico, so we're going to go there. It's not just like part of the capitalist system.
Yes.
So if you can make the local and state and federal, even if the federal is rigged, like there are some things that we can change at a local level,
no, you
even
can't.
if we...
So we disagree on that. So you say you can. I'm just saying we disagree on that.
Go ahead.
Because I understand how you believe that the local system is not rigged. It is. It's rigged
I'm
by
not
capitalism.
saying it's not rigged.
You just said it a second ago. You said it's not rigged. It's only rigged at the federal level. So anyway, let me get...
I didn't say it's not rigged at the... It's only rigged at the federal level.
It's rigged at all levels. So then why... I'm just saying, under capitalism. So let me first clear up this thing about voting, that he's saying that socialists don't believe in voting.
I want to clarify what I said. I do not think that socialists do not believe in voting. I'm saying that it's contradictory to what they stand for when they say that voting does not matter, when voting is part of even socialist democracies.
Right.
And voting is part of any system. I think most, not dictatorships and authoritarian systems. I'm not talking about those. Well, those within they have their, I'm not going to discuss that now. But what I am saying is that socialist and capitalist, well, the socialist democracy that we aspire for, you most sort as a revolutionary aspire for, will have to include voting.
Tons of voting.
So voting in general is important to voice part of where we stand, and where we do not stand, we agree or do not agree.
But voting under socialism is not a lie, that's what it is under capitalism. Voting under capitalism is a lie told to workers about you have a stake in the system. Voting under socialism is actually the way a mass democratic working class controlled society would decide not just who is leading, it would decide what is made, how resources are divided up among. It decides everything. It doesn't just decide the political, it decides the economic. It decides everything about society. So I believe in voting because voting is the way that when the masses of working people actually run society, they'll need to have votes every day. Not just once every few years and it's a representative. Your representatives are delegates that can be removed anytime you can, and that's how voting would really work. That's how real voting works, if you're giving the masses of people a true say in the stake in their society. That's not what's happening under capitalism. The reason you're getting confused is you still think that that democracy in San Francisco, or the democracy, say, maybe in some parts of the United States, is actually democratic. It's not. It's a dictatorship here. It's a dictatorship of Twitter, of Wells Fargo, of basically, and the Board of Ed and Board of Supervisors are basically people there to essentially make sure that they maintain that dictatorship, because when the strike goes down, the Marriott workers are on strike right now, right? Marriott workers are on strike.
Marriott workers,
but
yeah.
Guess what? Guess what they're not doing that they would really need to do to make that strike happen? They need to stop patrons from going in. They need to stop work. That's why pickets exist, right, on a strike? Mm-hmm. If the Marriott workers in that strike were doing actually what workers need to do in strike, which is make war with their bosses, which is stop patrons from going in, stop workers from going in, what will the Board of Supervisors in Oakland or San Francisco decide to do around that? If those workers stop them, won't let other workers work there, won't let patrons go into those hotels, which is why pickets exist. That's why workers go on strike, not just to stop work, but to stop any work from happening and to completely collapse the profits of their bosses by any means necessary. Strike is making war with the capitalists. So what happens when they do that? From your democratic privilege of having these Board of Supervisor people, what are they going to do?
You tell me.
They're going to bring the cops in and crack heads. That's exactly what they'll do. They're going to threaten them. You say, you better not touch a consumer. You better not touch somebody walking in there trying to go into the hotel. You better not touch a scab. Because the minute they do, your lovely Democratic Party people who are in the Board of Supervisors local will suddenly get some teeth. And they will smash that thing with the cops, or that's what they'll try to do. And if they don't do it, the state government will make sure that gets done. That's the world we live in, folks. The world we live in is not a nice world. The world we live in is extremely violent. And we're not going to stop this. Hold on, I'm not done yet. We are not going to stop that violence by just changing a drug law, marijuana. I even agree that we shouldn't have those laws. We are going to stop that by ending the prison system, by taking the police completely away. Police no longer exist. All our troops have to leave those countries that they're currently in and come back in here, take their guns, and take down the government. That's it. That is the only way this is going to happen. And none of that's going to happen through a vote. None of that. And secondly, the reason we have that welfare system, that healthcare system you're talking about, there's only one reason we have that at a national level and ultimately at a state level. It's because of the strike waves in the 30s where the capitalist class was deathly afraid of being taken down altogether. So what did they do? They basically delivered those reforms as a means of getting those movements off the streets, getting those movements out of the workplace. They delivered those scraps to people, important scraps, but scraps nonetheless to deflect the possibility of revolution in the 1930s. That is the reason that exists. They didn't give it to us. They didn't be like, oh no, we're a democracy, so we're going to give that to you. That was extracted as a result of the capitalist class being deathly afraid of a revolution happening in this country. They are not afraid of that right now. They have a notion. They know as class gets more and more divided that might be that they're a little bit worried. But there's nothing to worry about because everyone's captured under either one or two capitalist party, Democrats or Republicans. So they know they've got a lock. The thing that would really begin to frighten them is one, people not voting, and 2, people actually looking to alternatives to fight for the things they actually want. That's when people will become political, like truly political again, is when they actually start to fight for the things they actually want. They did that in the red wave. They did that in the teacher strike wave. Well, guess where that went? It went to the polls, and it's gone. Gone, gone, gone. Okay? That's where these struggles that have the basis for leading not to revolution someday, but no, revolution now. That's it. We don't have time to wait. And I'm not saying that out of a sense of impatience. I'm saying that out of a sense of unless we right now begin to build a movement that is completely clear that it needs to take down capitalism, and one of the aspects of building that is going to be getting clear on elections in the United States, then we will never have it. I'm not willing to wait. You are willing to wait because you don't believe it's possible. Your reason for counting on proposition like that is a result of your despair of the impossibility of revolution. I get it. That's how most of y'all feel. Of course you should feel that way. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen it since 1917, and it was smashed in about a year or 2. Okay, I get it. But we will not actually have the kind of society we really, really need. And I don't mean the one that's going to actually make it so World War III is. You saw that article I sent. The U.S. is now training its military in a completely different way. It's training itself to fight wars with China, training itself to fight wars with Russia and North Korea. No longer counterinsurgent wars. What do you think that's about? That's about the ruling class knows what it's preparing for. It's preparing for World War III, and it's preparing to win it. They think they can win it. I don't think they can. I think we all lose. I think that whatever. Okay? But unless we right now get clear about the system we live in, and right now get clear about the tasks in front of the working class, which is not about elections, because elections are an illusion meant to distract you from what you really need to do, which is wage war in the workplace on your employer. That's what it is. And we have to generalize that fight. All right? And the minute we do that, I guarantee you, you are going to see your state, you're going to see your local politicians all suddenly become very nasty, very mean, but very clear about the fact that even though you can't decide rules on the capitalist control of the means of production, they are going to ensure that that gets maintained.
Can you explain the voter suppression? Then, if you can try to explain the voter suppression, why the ruling class then? You tell me then.
I already did because they do count on racism and the Democrats and Republicans do want to rule. They have different ideas about how to rule over us, and one sex of party is going to use their divisions to try to we think this vote is going to go for the Democrats, so we're going to go with that. Like that's the standard stuff. It's racism, but it's not an attempt to say, oh, we're threatened by votes. We're fighting out how we rule over this working class, but the fact is that Democrats and Republicans are united around that project of ruling over us, and that's why it's such a lie. Like, look. One of the things that's being said right now is this country is so split. And what they really mean to say is they're split between Democrats and Republicans as if there's a fundamental difference between those two parties. There's not. The working class has never been more united in the time that I've known, but united in a sense that we accept the rule of these capitalists over us. And the capitalist class is united in saying, we rule you. The working class is united in saying, yes, you do. And so therefore, we're going to elect you to rule over us versus we're going to elect you to rule over us. That's what a large voter turnout means to the capitalists. It means that the working class has been tricked, has been fooled fully into accepting the rule of the capitalist over them. And we're going to decide, we're going to consent, essentially, to which one is going to be, essentially, exploiting us, and we're helping that exploitation by putting certain individuals to the state. So it has nothing to do with actually the process of workers liberating themselves, not just ideologically from capitalism, but waging that struggle to liberate. It deflects from that, and that's the role the elections have played.
I do not believe in the all or nothing extremity issue. I think that we cannot. I think that we can exhaust all our ability to be able to change a system. I think that we can vote as well as we can. I've given up campaigning recently for candidates. I've given up that, and the reason why is because I want to exert my energy in other things, but I'm not going to stop voting, because your vote does count. And like I said, I think that a lot of times, Andy, we refer back to the history in the recent time, but history is also changing, and we are, like I said earlier, my generation is the most diverse generation in the USA, and the young people are now having this wave of new ideas to bring forth to cause social adjustments to the way that we have old schooly thought.
Can you tell me some of those new ideas?
Such as the acceptance of the diversity of sexualities, such as seeing that equality is important in our society, such as...
And how is that, and how are those new ideas finding expression through the ballot box?
Those ideas are if we elect progressive candidates, people are demanding and using almost some of these social ideas as litmus tests.
Litmus tests.
You
mean like by voting for litmus test?
Litmus test.
But you're saying by voting for
as a
person
litmus
of color?
test to see if where people stand, candidates stand on Israel and Palestine, to see if they support single-payer healthcare, if they support having sanctuary cities, and their stands on immigration, to see if they support trans rights bills, to see if they support pro-choice. These are issues that we use now as young people to see if they are going to align, if people are going to align with us or not. And it's even being placed and is dividing the democratic establishment, because people are rising up, and we have the biggest turnout of women running for office, and diverse women running for office, from Muslims, from bartenders like Cortés, Alexander Cortés, Ocasio-Cortez. And when I say bartender, by the way, I mean to say as your non-traditional, non-politically elite candidate. We have people running for office as using their background to say that anyone can run for office now. And I'm not saying that running for office is the only thing, but I am saying that if we try to cause more social change within our system, it'll give people an opportunity to be open more about other ideas such as socialism. The Red Scare is kind of getting behind us a little bit, whereas socialism is not the scary thing, as Republicans are trying to still make it as though. But even this administration put out a report on socialism as to why it does not work, which I sent you a link to, because they're seeing that people are actually adopting the socialist ideas. And that is a result of what? Of starting to change as a society about what we think our parents taught us, to rethink those ideas. And even socialist ideas are being out on the table now, where you can have socialists like Gloria de la Riva, whether you agree with her or not, but to have her on the ticket, and to have other socialists be on the ticket in the future, and to demand changes such as the ones that you talked about was it Russia that you said, when we had this election, demanding and not deciding to compromise. So if we can elect socialists, and socialists can run and demand things from the establishment, and eventually have third parties, this is something that we can change. I know that you see it as a slow strategy, and your strategy has said that momentum needs to happen and change over things immediately. Right. At least that's what you have told me.
Right. I don't see it as a slow strategy. I see it as a failing strategy. Like it's not. It's a fast strategy towards giving up on your actual revolutionary demands. It's immediate, and it's not a slow strategy towards socialism. And the very things you just said, like about we have more women candidates running, we have more women of color, Muslim candidates, something like that. What that is the trick of identity politics being played by the capitalist class to make it appear that we are less racist, we are less sexist in this country and in the world, but it's not true. We are destroying the lives of women across the globe, as well as in this country as well, when we rip up the social safety net. So you are falling for, and in fact promoting, this illusion through identity politics by the Democratic Party that says that because we have these people elected in these places, because we're electing female capitalists of color to rule over us, that suddenly that means we're less racist. That is a lie. It is a lie. And it is an illusion, just like a voting system is an illusion, to make people feel like the system's getting better. It's not. It's getting worse. Racism's getting worse. The divide between rich and poor is getting worse. The gentrification is getting worse, not just in this country, but the things that this country is willing to do to other countries is getting worse, and the things that workers are willing to swallow to let them get away with it is getting worse. All these things are getting worse. I don't care how many women you put up there. I don't care how many black presidents, black board of supervisors, black whatever. You are going to either be ruled by white supervisors or black supervisors or women supervisors or Muslim supervisors, and they will be interested fundamentally in only one thing: maintaining the rule of capital over everyone, over every worker. That is their job. And if they don't do that, they're out. That's the thing. So I'm not going to fall for that illusion. I'm not, and you might, that's fine, but I don't. And I know that that notion of, hey, this is the socialism that is being sold is the socialism of we can take the slow road through the electoral system, Bernie Sanders, maybe through the Democratic Party. Okay, maybe not in the Democratic Party. Maybe we can get some socialists elected outside of it, but nevertheless we can make the state work. This is nothing new. They thought the same thing in Germany when literally the Socialist Party was ruling in Germany. And guess what? 6 or 7 years later, or maybe up to 10 years later, World War I. And then the socialists were like, okay, let's make war with Russia. That's how this goes. Unless we take down the system, unless we build a socialist movement, a revolutionary movement that is clear that the capitalist state cannot be used by us, but it's only being used as a weapon against us. Therefore, I don't really care to vote and elect which weapon is going to be used against me and how it's going to be used against me. I'm going to get out of that system, and I'm going to fight you on my terms, right? It's like a fish it's like a dolphin leaving the water to race with a cheetah. It's like, no, we've got to bring the cheetah into the water. Our venue is the venue of class struggle. And I don't mean just strikes where pickets are raised and people are banging drums. That's not what strikes are about, my friends. Strikes are about actually stopping workers from working, stopping consumers from buying, and ending profits with bosses. That's how you wage war against them, okay? And so ultimately those strikes have to be turned into, not only am I going to end your profits, I'm going to end your ability to extract profit from us through an insurrection that essentially destroys your state, creates a worker state where we have literally daily votes. That's what happened under the workers' councils in the Soviets. That is what happened under workers' councils in Spain as well. There were votes all the time. I agree with votes. But votes actually have to matter. Votes actually have to mean something about workers controlling things, not about workers being fooled into believing the system's working for them, and instead the system is actually being used to suppress us and exploit us. That is us. The current electoral system is the way that the capitalists can get us to consent to our own exploitation. And unless we stop that, and I don't mean that we're just talking about Tuesday right now, okay? Mm-hmm. But ideologically, we have to break from the idea that there's anything on offer there. And that's why I say what I say. Voting matters most, and voting under democratic voting under capitalism matters most and foremost to the capitalist class. It doesn't offer us anything because there's nothing there in that state unless we have a revolution for us to gain anything.
Well, I think we have exhausted that. But before anything, I did want to read something, and maybe you can counter it if you want, because I had something a little prepared that I did want to state some figures.
Okay.
I want to just quickly point out that these are continuing reasons why I think voting matters, and then you can rebuttal anything you want to rebuttal. So, young voters account for half of the voting population, making them a powerful political force. The youth vote has had the potential to be extremely influential in this country. In the USA, I am talking about. While young voter participation in 2016 declined 2% from a record 52% at the 2008 election. Today, the voting population includes almost equal parts millennials and baby boomers. We have now increased our generation. Our generation has had the chance to vote. I'm still upset why, and you disagreeing, but I'm taking the platform now to say this. I am upset why many young people, at 18, I registered myself to vote in this country. And I'm still wondering why people don't do it. Because the young people vote, like I said, young people have a more different way of thinking than the traditional old school way of thinking. I'm just going to list very quickly some things, the reasons why I think you should vote. 19% of all votes cast in 2012 came from young voters. Young voters are more likely to support issues such as, I said this already, same-sex marriage, supporting a pathway for citizenship for immigrants, and legalizing abortion than other age demographics. I think there's a problem with pathway to citizenship, as I have said in other videos.
It's anti-immigrant.
I think that we should have open borders, that we should strive towards that,
right,
to be able to have workers come in if they want to work here, like they do have in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Well, they do have that happening where they can cut. They still have borders though. It's not
right,
just you can just live anywhere.
Right.
But if I did say this, and now here's the figure: I said this already. 40% of millennials identify as non-white, making them the most diverse voting generation in history. This is the most difference than all other aspects of our history before, where we are now having the most diverse generation and millennial generation. And I think that this is why the voting matters now, to be influencing the government that we have now, without neglecting that there is still grassroots level organization that we should still attend to. But and the last thing I will say before I move on is there was several cases in the US history where every vote mattered. In New Hampshire Senate race was decided by 2 votes out of 223,363 in 1974. In Massachusetts, gubernatorial election was decided by 2 votes out of 102,066 in 1839. And the Alaskan congressional race was decided by a single vote out of 10,035 cast in 2008. By single digit margins. Voting is part of what can make a difference in outcomes if we're to have any say, at least currently, in this system. Look, even what, Nemo?
Naboo.
Naboo?
Naboo is Brandy's.
Naboo
Our
is
dog.
coming over to comfort me. Come here. You see?
He doesn't like to be picked up though.
Oh, okay. But you see, this is why we need to vote. And if you could vote for animal issues, you would vote, wouldn't you?
All right. Well, hi, Naboo.
I'm a little distracted, but go ahead.
Well, first off, all I'm going to say is that I think all I'll say is that I have spoken about the voting system under capitalism as an illusion meant to deceive workers. But I don't hate to say this word. Actually, I'm fine with saying this. But the first illusion, Eduardo, you're going to have to dispel with is this notion that you can simultaneously talk about fighting for open borders and then say pathway to
I read that. That was not my position.
Well,
but
that's not just your position. That position is opposed to open borders. Do you understand that? That position, it is all or nothing again. That position is opposed to open borders. You don't agree with that.
That was one thing.
So
that
that's
I had read.
That
is not something I wrote. I was reading something a little bit.
But I'm just saying that you're promoting those positions as if they're steps forward. They're steps forward. They're not. Uh-huh. They are a continuation of how immigrants and how workers across that border are going to be separated, not from young voters. I don't call them young voters. They're young workers. And their power is not realized through voting. That's their power is captured and ideologically trapped by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party when they see themselves as voters. These are young workers. And guess what? The young workers are actually going to become really powerful when they move away from this notion that they're going to be able to realize their power as voters, and they're going to realize their power as workers going on strike, and voting as workers, whether to go on strike, voting as workers once they take over those factories, what's going to be made, how it's going to be made, who it's going to be made for, voting as workers, what our working hours will be, what sort of unions and associations we want to make, voting as workers, how, like, on removing all our soldiers from the various places in South America and in Africa. That's what they'll be voting for. And instead of us being told we have to wait for it, it will happen immediately. That's what happened in Russia. Okay? During the revolutionary period after the revolution, people could actually vote on stuff, and that shit actually happened. That's not what happens today. We vote on things, and none of the things we vote on what we essentially don't want. Well, we vote for thinking we're going to get some piece of what we want, and we always get bad. We get it under the Democrats.
So you tell me
a
little bit of history here. You said something about the Russians having had voted for some candidates that had made demands up on with
not just candidates, not candidates, delegates to the workers' councils who would basically oversee how they ran their workplaces. The initial Soviets didn't want to nationalize the banks. Workers wanted them to nationalize the banks, so they had to nationalize the banks. They had to nationalize even certain industries that the
but
people who would
be mentioned in one video that I still have yet to read.
Yeah.
But this part of history that intrigued me very much, and you had mentioned it, and I thought we should give expansion to that. You had said that the people who were elected. I don't remember it.
Oh, you were talking about like the Bolshevik Party when it was actually working within the parliamentary system. Yes. Well, and again, I am in that context. There were massive strike waves going on just prior to 1914, 1912, and things like that. There was an actual revolutionary movement. I will reserve judgment. I will reserve judgment on how we would use the electoral system in the United States with its massive reformist apparatus.
Expand on that for a second. Give us some. I want to know so I can see why you said it earlier.
Yeah.
Because it is something that people had voted for certain candidates, right?
Right. They had essentially voted for Bolsheviks in the parliament, and the role of those Bolsheviks in the parliament was basically to disrupt the operations of the parliament.
And can't we not do that the same thing here?
Like I said, I'm open to that idea, but we don't have a massive strike wave in this country.
So if you're open to the idea, then why don't we look for those people to be able to disrupt the establishment?
It's not about the people. It's about the level of class struggle and the organization in place. It's not individuals who will do this. This is the reason they were able to do that was because there was a massive wave of working class struggle. There were actual sizable revolutionary parties existing there. We don't have such a thing in this country.
So why don't we do that, Andy?
Well, part of building that, in my mind, is actually we're going to have to dispel with this notion that, particularly when there's nothing on the ground for us here, there is no movement, there is no revolutionary party, that somehow we can get some scraps by voting for something that's actually capitalist.
If we have socialist collectives here,
we don't have it.
And we can elect people within those socialist collectives to be able to go into the establishment, to disrupt the establishment, then we should do that. And I would be very happy to vote for those people.
Well, that doesn't exist in this election, so there's nothing to vote for.
But what you understand what I'm saying? Because we're talking about election. You're talking about this election. I'm talking about in general, for the elections in...
I am.
If there is such candidate that is a socialist, that is willing to disrupt and go into, where is it? I'd like for them to show up.
They don't exist right now. Yeah, that person doesn't exist.
And because they do not exist, then show up and stop complaining and telling me that you're not going to the vote.
Because
show up and go and register yourself as a candidate and ignite the people. And tell them that you should run yourself.
And I'm going to say
you should say, I go for no open borders. And I'm going to go as a person that is not going to allow the ruling class to go over the working class.
Right.
If you're going to say something like that, I would vote for you.
Right. And I'm going to say that would be a waste of your time right now. Because the best thing socialists can be doing, this is what I said before, is they've got to be in their workplace. This is building from below. You have this notion that we can get these nice or even revolutionary socialists at the top and make this change from down. It doesn't work that way, folks. He hopes it works that way.
No,
Oh, stop.
I'm not
Let me
that.
finish. He hopes it works that way. Everyone else here hopes it works. It doesn't work that way. There is no quick road to building a rank and file revolutionary movement that wants to take the head off of capitalism and that's willing to do so by striking anywhere they possibly can. Such a movement will have to contend with elections as a means of diverting itself. That's clear. That's what happened in the 30s. And how it will deal with being diverted by the elections, not growing through the elections, but being diverted through the elections, I'm open to that question. But that question isn't live right now. It hasn't been a live question since the 1930s, well before I was alive. Okay? It wasn't even really a live question in the 1960s. Okay? So when there is a mass revolutionary party, and I mean a mass revolutionary party with roots in the working class, leading several areas of strike waves all across cities, then we can discuss how does that revolutionary party contend with the capitalist class trying to steal that movement from them using the elections. Then we can talk about that. But that's not where we're at right now. What we're at right now is sand being thrown in our eyes time after time after time, and us being put to sleep through the elections and giving up on a revolution, which must happen now or soon, unless we're going to have real problems because capitalism is, screwing
Well, I
everything
think
over.
that we should organize at the grassroots level for socialists to be able to have to organize themselves, and also have these very strong leaders that I have seen to work themselves up to disrupt the establishment, to be able to advocate for the working class.
And like I said,
and I would vote for them. Unfortunately, they're not running. And if you're listening to this and you're so critical of the voting elections, go run then and disrupt. I don't know. Like, you keep saying, "Oh, I'm not going to vote," and la la la. Well, then go and run for yourself. Go and get yourself registered, and I will vote for you depending on your policies, on what you decide that you want to have.
And you understand the difference between what I'm saying is I'm saying don't run, because what will happen to you under these conditions when there's no social movement is you won't change the system. You won't be able to get those.
I'm not asking for changing the system.
I am. Well, so that's why I'm saying
I mean,
this.
like, just reforming the system. I want to also transform the system.
Well, you won't. Not only will you not reform the system, you yourself will be changed away from being a revolutionary into some sort of bureaucrat. That's what happens to everyone right now in the absence of an actual working class revolutionary movement that can actually sustain and support a candidate of such a sort. It cannot be built from above. I wish it could, or maybe people wish it could, but that's not the movement anyway. The socialist revolution is going to be the act of the class itself, and so. That's one of our differences. Is I believe if you are that person that Eduardo's talking about, don't do what he's saying. Stay on the ground and build. You're going to have to build roots in your own work, at your workplace, wherever you work, and try to figure out how you can actually convince others of this need for us to struggle directly with our bosses and generalize that struggle into mass strikes, general strikes, and ultimately an insurrection in this country, which will take down our government and replace it with a worker state.
Oh, my argument is that it's just I hear a lot of complaining, and I want to hear them register themselves. And there is, like, my Saul, my brother yesterday, he was saying to me, "Why is there only 2 candidates that I can only choose?" And I said to him, "Why aren't there more candidates running for office then to disrupt the establishment?" And I brought up the example that you had mentioned about this, the Bolsheviks, disrupting the establishment. Where are these people? Where are the radicals? Where are the radicals criticizing the system?
They've given up,
right?
And that's why I'm doing this. What's left? And again, we have so many differences have come out in this. You say people are doing so much complaining. I don't think people are doing enough complaining. They're not complaining enough about why are our soldiers on every place in the globe.
Most people are complacent.
Most people are, like yourself, are in despair and think either I vote for some of these fools who are going to screw me over, or frankly, all these people who are not voting, they're not revolutionaries either. They're just like, forget it. I just give up on the whole thing. I'm just not paying attention, because people are in deep despair about this. Frankly, I feel despair over the possibility of revolution, but I'm not willing to give up on it. And I know that for me, in my mind, going down this road of thinking that voting is some avenue is one of the aspects, one of the ways people give up on it. It's not the only way. There are several ways people give up on revolution.
I think that you better be careful, Andy, to not destroy.
You're threatening me. You're threatening me. I don't feel safe. Go ahead. Finish.
I think that you need to be careful not to cut allies, Andy.
Yes.
Because, a revolution happens in numbers. And if you're going to find other like-minded people like yourself, there is the smaller population. I think there are people like myself that see that we live in this shitty system that exists at the moment, and that we're waiting for the revolution to happen. And that once the revolution train has happened, I will hop onto it. And when I hop onto it, I will do what it takes to be able to help and support. But where is it?
Well,
I'd like to see it. And when it shows up, I will hop onto it.
All right.
At the moment, I am going to the poll.
You heard it here, folks. As soon as we build it, the rest of us revolutionaries, with like 3 of us in the city right now, we've got to build that thing for him. So as soon as we do, he'll
Where
come
is
on board.
it?
I agree.
Get to the polls. Or register.
Don't vote.
Register yourself then. You have so much to say. Register. I want to see it then.
All right.
They have the spaces right there. Put your name.
Holy smokes. What is that? Ayos mio?
Adios mio.
Ayos mio. All right.
So that is what we have to say. So I will state, it's the 6th of November. It is not the only thing you can do as a person active in your democracy or this showdown that we're trying to have a pretend democracy.
I did not vote sticker.
And I will have the I vote sticker the following time.
Like I said, Brandy's going to hate me now. Brandy, I'm sorry.
But I am glad so we are releasing this video, and if you are not planning to vote or you don't know how to vote, contact me. I will put my Facebook information that you can contact me via Messenger.
But
hold on, Andy. I need this moments right now. I approve this message. I'm going to include my link so that you can contact me directly if you are in San Francisco or in California. Even if you are anywhere in the USA, federally, you can still vote, and there are ways, and I can link you up to some links. But I'm going to link those up in our description box. Okay. Hopefully you'll not delete them.
Oh my God. So I also hope that it obviously got a lively discussion here. This wasn't a debate, was it? Definitely a debate.
No, this is how we talk.
Yes,
outside of the video.
Yes, but I definitely would like to hear from more people on this. Comments on iTunes, comments on YouTube, BitChute, Stitcher, whatever platform you hear this on. We're going to try to get this out quickly. We're doing it on a Sunday.
Yeah.
We're going to try to get this out today.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, like we said, we're going to have our post-election wrap-up, which is really going to be about assessing the election results. Not about elections generally, but the actual results, what they say about what's going on. So,
and if you're tired of holding your nose and voting for the better two evils, go run. I want to see you run.
Now you want the better of two evils. It's not even lesser
I
anymore,
didn't say people.
I'm kidding.
The lesser or better. Did I say better?
Better.
I'm sorry.
That's wrong for me to do that.
The lesser of two evils.
That's how it goes, though. You start with the lesser, and then you want the better. See how they've won him over already?
No, it's my English.
No, and it's just a frustration with having to deal with me.
All right. Entonces voten, por favor. 6 de noviembre, the 6th of November. I'm targeting both the bilingual community.
And I do believe immigrants, illegal immigrants, all immigrants should have the right to vote. I agree with that. So
yeah.
I'll just say that.
Please vote for all. 3 people, 3 groups of people.
So we'll probably see you in a few days. We're going to get this out today, and we'll be back probably by next Sunday or Saturday is when we'll have our next episode out.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, which will
so
be
I have to edit this today.
November 8th or something like that.
And then we will see.
November 9th that's when our next episode will be.
And then we will go over the sad points, the bad news and the good news after the midterm elections.
My prediction
You're all bad news for the elections.
No blue wave. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But it looks like the house is going to be taken, maybe.
that's what my prediction was. They wouldn't get away with doing that, or they wouldn't do that. We'll see. I'm kind of looking at this as sort of like the same 2016 election where the mainstream media has gotten the polls wrong. But we'll see. We're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Eduardo.
Thank you, Andy, for this lively discussion.
I'll still drive you home.
All right.
All right, we'll see you
Thank
next
you,
week.
everyone. Oh, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with everyone. We're on iTunes, YouTube, BitChute, Stitcher, Google Play. 5 mediums. Do not complain that you don't have a medium for it.
Correct.
I just had some friends immediately sign up and subscribe.
Awesome.
Because they're saying, oh, I don't have Google Play. What?
I know.
We're on all mediums. There's no complaining.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Ciao.
Take care. Bye-bye.